So with Games Workshop's grand tournament announcement of like 3 events across the US, and by across, I've been informed that it's in the corner. The Grand Tournament Series, which is going to be held in Orlando, Florida, Austin, Texas, and New Orleans in Louisiana. They've also shown off some terrain packs. So these are 2 table layouts for the Grand Tournament. What's quite interesting is Games Workshop have never really done this. And a big complaint in Warhammer world has always been that there isn't enough terrain, and there's not varied terrain, doesn't work very well, it just looks cool, but it doesn't work. I guess it is on the Warhammer community website, so this is the official Games Workshop recommended tournament terrain pack, which is something we never had before. So these are designed for 2 different deployment types. So I imagine this one is going to be like Dawn of War, and then this one's going to be like Hammer and Anvil, for example. So long ways and then short ways, you know? There is a picture. This is a table. This is actually Mike Brandt's table that he's been using for testing. What you can't see very well in this picture is that all of these terrain pieces are actually on acrylic bases. Now, Games Workshop don't provide bases with terrain. There's a very good argument to say that terrain should come on a base to define where the rules for it lie, because you have like this piece in the middle, it's tiny and it's got some random broken bits. Now the random broken bits will just do nothing in the game, whereas if you put a big bit on the front and broken bit on the back and then put a bit of a base, you can say that entire thing is a ruin, for example. So the entire block would now be obscuring, which is good and bad. It's very interesting because it's something usually you want to avoid. But for example, this terrain piece here, these green lines that someone's drawn essentially match up to this, right? So this layout here, layout 2, is this picture, you know? The red line represents the actual wall of the building. The green represents the base of the building. So you've got some really large blockers, supposedly 12 by 12 in inches. You got some 12 by 6, and then you have some random trees around the outside. What I think they're going to be playing as is this entire base for this ruin would have obscuring, which means things can't see over. So terrain piece 1, which is the 4 larger pieces in the middle, are ruins. All fall into area terrain. They have scalable, breachable, light cover, defensible, and obscuring traits. So what they're saying is this entire green square is going to be obscuring. What it also means is Games Workshop is running their own events, and they are openly admitting that their terrain is not functional out of the box. What they need to for a tournament pack is to put it on bases to cover the ground, you know? Now, it'd be really interesting to see what type of trees Games Workshop use. Are they going to use the bog brush trees, or are they going to be forced to use wildwoods? Because these are the area terrain, scalable, dense cover, breachable, defensible, and difficult ground. So -1 to hit shooting through them, -2 to move unless you're Death Guard or Knights. And these are these bits. The problem is with this tournament terrain pack is that the things that are -1 to hit are on the edges of the board, so they're not really going to interact with the game that much. Feels very open. What you would want to try and avoid with terrain is having shooting galleries. Let's say this is deployment, we've got purple, we like MS Paint. If I can stand here and shoot my opponent here, that's not a very good board. If I can stand here and shoot my opponent here, that's not a very good board. Now what they've got here is, because of these bases that they've got, what you'd hope and what you'd expect is while you're stood here, when you shoot this way, the building is actually obscuring, so they can't see through that. So now their line of sight is limited to this way, which they might be able to draw a line here. And then that's the same for like here. If they shoot that way, they're getting clipped by a tree, so they're -1. And I think that's the same this way. I think that's what the idea of this board is. That's fine, but the problem is like the rest of it's quite open. As soon as you're stood here, you can get seen from over here freely. You can get seen from over there freely. It depends what this gap is. We don't really know what this gap is yet because there's no measurements on the board. This one, this deployment especially, if that's Dawn of War, that is a lot of open space in the middle. Because this is Games Workshop terrain, it's just full of like archways, you know, like this. Like here, that's a hole. That's a hole. This is essentially wide open. So for things like knights or planes, if this is a knight with his big guns, you know, pew 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 pew, that's his guns. That's a crusader, you know. I don't know what this is. They're the grills. He can't see through here. He can't see through here. He can't see that way, and he can't see that way. His line of sight is very limited, but the enemy can stand literally anywhere and see that knight from the other side of the board, right? For a knight player, because they don't interact with obscuring, they can't see through it, but they can be seen through it, is that this board's wide open because of the way that Games Workshop designs their terrain. There's windows all over the board, and that's been the biggest complaint about Games Workshop terrain. It's why MDF, like L-shapes, became so popular from Nova, but now what he's saying is you should be running them on bases. Look at this massive acrylic base. If these windows were blocked off, it wouldn't be so bad. I don't think this bodes well. Now, they've already said, like Mike Brandt had said, for Games Workshop, the terrain that we make isn't very good. We're going to have to put it on bases to make it functional. Or they're then going to go, okay, we've already put them on bases. We're also going to plastic card all the windows. Now, again, as I said, like if this was an L, let's say that's an L shape, right? So if these were L shapes, right? Now, if that knight that we have is stood here, you know, on the deployment line again. Now, he can't see. But the thing is nothing over here can see him either, which makes, in my opinion, a more interactive game. Even if this guy decided to jump in this building, this is blocked, so he can't physically see. He would have to stand here to see that knight. Like, I like big L's in the middle of the board. I think it makes it more interactive game. It makes combat armies much better. But the problem is you can't really travel around this board as it stands. You need something in the middle that physically blocks line of sight, because if someone stands here, they shouldn't be able to see the entire board. How would you set up on this board as a shooting army? I would like more force myself over one side, because then I can like whip around this L shape. Or I'd go for like, I'd hide behind this side and come out that side. Or I'd like kind of filter around here and go around the middle. But like you could like swing your army this way and start seeing over here. You're not even interacting with those L's. But the L's are there to protect the combat army. Let's pretend my L shapes aren't there. If you just sit here and see the entire board, what's the point in playing anything? Look at Richard Siegler, right? He looked at the ACO terrain from this weekend, saw that they had F all, so took Tau and did really well. Because Tau struggle with dense boards, which is what 9th edition is good on. As a demon player, I would hate that board as the forward deployments can all be seen into, and I cannot hide barely anything without giving up forward deployment. Exactly, yeah. As a demon player, you'd have to deploy like here, right? Or maybe like over here. Because if you deploy here without the my pretend L's in the way, you just see everything. Even though in deploying in those areas, I would get shot regardless. Yeah, because obviously you can see there and you can see there. So this is the problem. This is the problem with it. So it's going to be interesting to see how they address it. AdMech are going to absolutely love this table. And again, with the example here, like we can see the ruin lines. There's nothing in the middle. Let's give them the benefit of doubt. Let's say all of this is blocked line of sight, right? All of that, long walls. Let's say it's like that. You've still got this in the middle. Castellan robots, right? They're not very good anymore, but there's 6 of them here, right? They move like 8 inches. So let's say that's 6, right? One of them tags that piece. These Castellan robots that shoot 19 times. Not a very good example. No one uses them anymore. They move there, right? They can see everything. They're going to see everything. I don't know. I'm critiquing it. I think it's good to critique these sort of things until we can actually see it physically represented. It'll be hard, but I think the only time we'll see that is when it's at the event, you know?